Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's PMI Friday webinar, Process Automation in the Everyday with Rich Seddon. I'm Susanna Clark, and I'm going to be facilitating today. So that includes running all the Q&A and chat. So please, you can find the Q&A and chat buttons on your Zoom control panel. Please do use them, put any questions in there, any comments, and I'll put them to Rich during the webinar today. We are recording today's webinar, and for everyone on this webinar, we will be sending you a link via email early next week. That will have the full recording with it, so you'll see both the slides and also have all the audio that you're going to hear today. And as usual, we're also broadcasting live on Facebook and LinkedIn. So to those of you who are joining us on those live streams, we welcome you. In future, to be able to participate in any polls and also to receive the recording via email, please do register at pmi.co.uk/webinars. We will be sending everybody who's registered for the webinar a short Voice the Customer survey at the end of the session today. As always, we are very, very grateful for your feedback and also suggestions. So we build our future topics based on the topics you tell us that you want to see. So please do complete that survey and send it to us. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And finally, from me, before we get underway, we've been running these webinars every week now. They're really to support our clients and also all our fellow industry practitioners in these difficult times. We're very conscious that some people are not currently able to work or are not in work. So we are offering a support, further support in the form of a CV and profile review service. So if you find yourself in a position, please do email us at team@pmi.co.uk, and we'd be delighted to review your profile or CV and give you some feedback with opportunities to enhance it. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support. And now I'd like to hand over to Rich.
Thanks, Suze. Cheers. Thank you very much. So good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rich Seddon, and it's great to be with you today. I'm one of the managing partners, and on screen you'll see my contact details, including LinkedIn and my email address as well. We really love to hear from people as part of these webinars, so do feel free to link in with me and drop any comments. So we do use the chat functionality quite a lot in these webinars as well, and today I'm expecting quite a lot of interaction and questions. Now, Suze will put those to me, as she said, during the session, but do use the chat as well as the Q&A. Really love to hear your perspectives on the things that I'm going to cover. So on that note, here's the plan. Daily process automation is the topic, improvement using automation in the everyday. Now, those of you who've been on the webinars the last couple of weeks will have heard my colleague Barry talk a lot about daily process management. He's talked about the approach, the mindset, the culture, and some of the tools. This one is an extension of that, but using some of the solutions to help support daily process management and continuous improvement activities. So we're going to explore some of those tools. What are they? We put a couple of case studies together for you. I'm going to share some factors for success. So that's the plan. Let's get underway. Background. Now, why this webinar and why now? And it's because of this, essentially. In the past 2 years, the world of process automation has changed dramatically. Now, what do we mean by that? The biggest change is around the accessibility of the tools. The automation tools have transformed and have become more accessible than ever before, both in terms of cost, in terms of usability, and also in terms of the pre-configured functionality, some of which we're going to see today, that is making a profound impact on the performance improvement, continuous improvement, business improvement communities. So we are changing our work right now as to take this into account. And we're sharing those thoughts with you as we're going along and sharing some of our experience thus far. And the observation, one of the observations we have is that the automation tools have moved from being the preserve of what we call big IT, the big IT projects. They're still around, don't get me wrong, as I'm sure many of you are involved in right now. But this new breed of automation tool we've called, this is PMI's term, DPA, Daily Process Automation. And hopefully we'll bring that to life as we step through this today. And it's worth noting, finally on this slide, we're going to explore some of the opportunities and the challenges that this automation, new breed of automation tools brings. Now, sometimes these are referred to as the democratization of automation tools. I'm not sure about that. And I'll talk later on about why I'm saying that. I'm not sure about the terminology, but also I'm skeptical based on my experience of some of the claims that are being made around these tools. So we're all about getting practical today. And so we want to explore this, and I reiterate again, do let us know any practical challenges, experience, share that in the chat so we can make this as rich an experience as possible. So those of you who've attended one of my webinars in the past on digital process transformation, we talked about lots of the different technologies in the big macro picture, the digital space, everything from devices through to automation tools, 3D printing, etc., etc. This is going to focus purely on the right-hand side of this slide. Now, RPA, robotic process automation, is a well-established topic, well-established set of tools, been around for quite a long time and used in many, many different arenas. So I've put this slide together to show how we distinguish between these two types of automation, the robotic process automation versus the new breed of tools, which we're calling the DPA, the daily process automation tools. RPA, first of all, traditionally, and these I'm talking in general terms here, so I appreciate you can always challenge these in different ways, but in general terms, to distinguish between these two, RPA is typically around high volume numbers of transaction, very high volume numbers of transaction, typically high cost, comparatively speaking, to the DPA tools. So you're talking for an RPA license, you're talking usually around €6,000, something of that nature, depending on the tool, in general terms. Usually fairly complex, and critically, they often require specialist implementation services. Now, contrast to that to the daily process automation tools, the DPA tools. These can be achieved with much lower volumes. The business case and the bar is set much lower in order to make them worthwhile. They're lower in cost, generally, depending on the pricing model. They can be simple and can be implemented by anyone. Now, two things to notice about that last point. It's got the word can at the front, and it's got 3 question marks at the end. So that's not a typo that I've left in there from my notes. That's deliberate. Now, here's the first outing of my skepticism on this front, and I'll flesh this out later on. Some of the tools I'm going to show you on the next screen, some of the names of the tools. When you go and have a look at some of them, maybe some of you are already using them, a lot of them make claims around code-free automation, no-code automation, not just low code, but no code. It is in part true, but not entirely. And I'll come back to that point as we step through. So when I say they can be implemented by anyone, question mark, they can be, perhaps that point should say, can be implemented by more people than RPA. However, the accessibility, depending on your company's IT policies, is going to make and is right now making a profound difference to the continuous improvement community. So let's explore why. So before we go into any of the case studies or any more examples, let's have a quick look at some of the tools, some of the names of the tools. Some of these will be familiar with you. There is a plethora of different tools available. Now, we're not advocating any one or two of these things. In the DPA space, there's all kinds of names: Workato, Zapier, Action Desk, Microsoft Power Automate, also called Microsoft Flow. Today, we're going to show you a case study using 2 of these. And the purpose of us putting all these logos on here is not to suggest that these are the best or anything like that. These are just a selection. There's a load more out there. Reason we don't make recommendations is because part of the exploration of what the tools can do is valuable in and of itself. So we'd encourage you to go and find out. And if any of you have experience of any of these tools, we'd love to hear from you as well. So do feel free to put that in the chat. But they all vary in their pre-configurations. So most of them revolve around templates. So they have some initial basic templates, which probably do fit into the category of no-code solutions where you can automate simple processes. But it's things like send an email, send me a text message when my boss sends me an email, things like that, questionable things like that. I exaggerate slightly, but they're very simple steps, and that tends to be where most of the templates start. However, some of the principles in there, so automating around Excel particularly, has some very, very profound implications for how we go about managing our daily processes. So all the stuff that Barry was talking about the last 2 weeks, these solutions can have implications for that. So again, I'll just reiterate, Zapier and Power Automate, I'm going to show you a case study on those shortly, and we'll explore them. But again, let's keep this one moving. So the PMI definition of digital process transformation at the macro level, just thought it's worth reminding ourselves of this. 3 elements to it: efficiency, effectiveness, and customer experience. And here's our definition. The use of digital technologies to create improved business processes that enhance efficiency, effectiveness, and customer experience. Underscore on the and. It's all 3 of those elements. It's not one or the other. And we'll explain that and illustrate that more shortly. Bringing those 3 together enables the maximum effectiveness of the transformation as a whole and does enable transformation. And DPA is a subset of that. So this definition applies to any automation of the processes. Does it enhance efficiency, effectiveness, and the customer experience? And Suze, I can see we've got a question.
Yes, which I think is irrelevant at this point, having you just talked about sort of RPA versus DPA. So the question is that I once worked in a shared service center as a process automation innovation consultant. The volume of transactions were high, but the question is, can DPA be used to replace RPA, and can therefore it still be efficient in order to, achieve the gains that you're looking for?
So you're going to get a consultant's response here. It depends. My old favorite. So it does depend. Without being facetious. Yes, is the high level answer is yes, it can in some circumstances, which is why I say it depends. So a lot of the tools have moved on and have moved on fast. The line between RPA and DPA is becoming increasingly blurred. And a lot of the RPA vendors and software houses are becoming quite alarmed and threatened by the DPA tools. The accessibility and the cost point and the DIY nature, the do-it-yourself nature, if you like, of some of them, it has threats to not only their licensing model, but also their consulting models as well. So yes, in certain circumstances, not all, yes, it can.
Thanks very much, Rich, and thanks for the question. Do keep them coming.
Okay, so hopefully you're with me so far, and this is making sense. So let's try. Let's just look at some of the theory before we dive into the first case study. Automation and everyday improvement. How do these 2 things fit together? So many of you will be familiar with our model for daily process improvement. Standardize, maintain, improve. Standardize being about identifying, sharing, and adopting the best known way. Maintenance, maintain, being the proactive identification and resolution of problems before they become impacts onto performance. And then improve, being around continually streamlining to strip out waste, duplication, and inconsistencies. Now, one of the questions we often get asked is, where does automation fit in this cycle? And the answer, it's here, and it's here. It's all 3 areas. The DPA tools can help you standardize and operate the best known way in an efficient manner. They can help you maintain performance, and we're going to demonstrate both of those to you shortly. also help you on the improvement to eliminate waste, duplication, and errors particularly. They're very valuable given the nature of them. And errors that creep in and value-added time and waste that's in those processes is a key driver around these DPA tools. And for the first time, it's enabling you to do small parts at a time, which is why it fits with the standardize, maintain, improve cycle. So that's kind of the framework we're operating in. So we're going to have a poll. First of all, see who's in the room, see what's going on. And it's a very simple question. Are you using, given what you now understand thus far, no, I haven't done the case studies yet, are you using daily process automation? And you've got 4 answers there. Yes, we currently use DPA tools in our operations. No, not yet, but we are planning to use DPA. No, we don't currently use DPA or have active plans to do so. And answer 4, I'm really not sure. So Susie's going to launch that poll for me now. It should be on your screen.
Yes, I have. That should be available to everybody now. Out of interest, Rich, when you pose this question, what is it that you're looking for in terms of what you're hoping to understand?
So it's kind of trying to validate a theory, Suze. In our experience with clients, we're seeing a range of answers under this category. And I'm trying to get a sense of whether this audience validates what anecdotally I'm seeing in customers of different types of industries. Now, I've got a good spread of industries here today looking at the attendance list, which is why I thought it'd be interesting to pose this one. And I'll share my reflections on that, I think, shortly. So that's what I had in mind when I put this up.
Okay. So if you last couple of moments for you just to cast your decision as to which of these 4 you think you sit best in, and then I'm going to end the polling and share that with everybody so everyone can see the results.
Aha, okay, so those have popped up on screen now. So we've got a distributed set here. Nudging ahead is the answer number 1. Yes, we do currently use DPA tools. That's great to hear. So no pressure, folks, but really like to hear about your experience in the chat on that one. What are you using them for? Where are you using? What benefits are you seeing? What issues has it presented and challenges? Throw those forward into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And then got a fair few saying not yet, but we are planning to. Great. Well, hopefully we'll be able to guide on some of the pitfalls today and some of the recipes for success. No current plans, just at 13%, and I'm not sure at 28. In fact, I've just noticed I'm not sure is actually in second place. So great. Okay. So hopefully this will be of help to you as well today to explore this and you see some of the potentials. Now, we are limited on time in that we've only got an hour, so I'm going to be trying to bring this to life as quickly as I possibly can. Thanks, Suze. If you could just take those off screen, that'd be great. Yeah. Thank you very much. So before we go on, I thought I'd reflect on what the audience in the previous digital transformation webinars that I did said. Because 2 things jumped out at me, and I collected this up across 2 separate webinars asking the same questions. 59% of respondents said they had experience of digital projects failing, and 51% of respondents said digital transformation was a responsibility of the business/continuous improvement team. You rename the team appropriate to your organization. Now, that's interesting for 2 reasons for me. One is the hazards of failing. We've all, I'm sure, at various times had some kind of experience or heard of someone that's had some experience of digital projects failing. But the stakes can be quite high here, which is why some of the methods that I'm going to suggest today can help you avoid that failure and concentrate on success. And it's about mindset and approach. And then the second one is about responsibility. Now, that I absolutely advocate. I'd love to see that number much, much higher. These DPA tools are changing the face of the improvement profession and the improvement professional in real time, right now. I think it's critical that both quality and improvement functions seize control of these tools and take the lead in how they're applied, because you've got so much to offer. And you'll see throughout this, I'm suggesting, and one of my core thesis here is that the core and business as usual tools for improvement absolutely apply in digital automation circumstances. They work, they help, they are successful, and they can make you more successful. So that's why I'd like to see that number 51% way higher and the first number much lower. Suze.
So a couple of people who've just been contributing to the chat, and I just thought it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this.
Am I going to regret asking for all this input now? I'm going to be put on the spot here with technical questions, aren't I?
Actually, no, these aren't technical questions. These
Okay,
are absolutely process questions.
Thank you, being kind.
So so John, who is working in the energy sector, currently they're using Blue Prism. So they're using that to automate a lot of what were originally manual user processes, including validation of accounts, consolidation of debt. He says that this has allowed us to cut down a lot of hours of manual processing, but has created more work on the flip side with exceptions that are produced from the automated process. And I just thought that was quite interesting, and to hear your perspective on that, I'd quite like to share that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, automation and digitization is no different to any other setting. It relies on the information and the data that you're getting in. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that. I do think it's often underplayed and underestimated. And one of my key lines I regularly cite at clients in projects such as this, settings such as that, are never underestimate the power of hope. You know, the technology can offer great things, but it's only as good as the inputs it ever gets into it. So yeah, it's really not surprising, which is why I say with such confidence, it's the traditional tools of understanding the process and understanding the nature of the process by which the new results you are working with are generated is so critical. So yeah, that's a common experience, and one that the vendors are not as open as they should be about, to be quite honest.
Thanks so much. Thanks, John. And some other pieces of feedback, and there are what other situations are people using automation in for their ISO standards compliance in HR, in continuous improvement, and in financial processes. So that's good to see and hear that. And then Sam says, surely a solution that causes more work in exceptions is a bad solution. I think that depends, doesn't it?
Yeah, it depends on the cost, but it's a great point, because yes, the exceptions are often unknown, because yes, it's very difficult often to pilot at scale. Particularly with RPA solutions. So business cases are often built with some very, very hopeful assumptions on exceptions. And then it can very rapidly undermine it, by which time it is too late which is why I'm saying with such rigor, the understanding of the data that's coming in and the process by which that data is generated can help you make better decisions and set expectations as to what you're going to get out in terms of exceptions.
Great, thanks everybody for your contributions, and thanks, Rich.
Cheers. Okay, so the case study we've chosen is one that you have all been part of inadvertently. So this is a very simple example of how we, PMI, administer the daily webinars. The daily webinars, help, don't make me write them daily. The weekly webinars, the PMI Friday webinars, this webinar that you're on, and this is the process that we had before we put it through daily process automation. So before the webinar, before we actually run it, you guys as registrants go to our landing page, you complete a Zoom booking form, entering your details, and then it switches to us. So at that point, hands over to us. So our operations team then need to go into Zoom, into the back-end Zoom console, and they run a report. Okay, so far so good. They save that report into Excel, and then the report is emailed to the presenter so that we know. That happens on Friday morning. used to happen on Friday morning, I should say, before we run the webinar. Now, the exclamation mark there at the top is because that's a snapshot of time. So we've taken the report at whatever it is, 9:30 in the morning. The registrations are open right through till we start running at 3 o'clock. It's emailed out. So the moment it's emailed out, it's out of date. And then we deliver. So that's what I'm doing now. And that little picture there is from the webinar I ran back in October, when haircuts were still allowed and my hair didn't look like Ursula von der Leyen's. But once we have delivered the webinar, this is the timing report on the bottom of it. About 4 minutes, 2 minutes to save it, 1 minute to email it. Not a great deal. Okay, look at that and go, we only run these things once a week. Where could possibly be the role for DPA in here for daily process automation? Well, let's look at after the webinar. So we finish up about 4 o'clock on the Friday, then hands back to our operations team. So they have to run 2 reports in Zoom at this point. One is the registrations and one is the attendees. So picks up anyone that the first report missed, and the second one gets anyone and the times at which people arrived and left the sessions. So that splits into 2. The attendee report is saved into Excel. The registration report is saved into Excel. And then it needs transferring into our CRM system, our back office system, which is Microsoft Dynamics. So you import the attendees, because there's no communication link between Zoom and Dynamics. Import the attendees into a Dynamics list, and then the registration's exactly the same. But whilst you're doing that, it has to you have to deduplicate, add new contacts where new people that we've never been in touch with before have registered, merge duplicates, so where there are people that have used different email addresses, change companies, all of that kind of stuff, and putting that together. Now, bear in mind, this is 4 o'clock on a Friday when we've finished. And then once that's done, you need to export those people from Dynamics into the survey system to email out the survey to ask how we've done. And then once the survey results come back in, they're put into Excel and analyzed. And then finally share the results by email. Pretty conventional set of activities. You could change the setting of this process anywhere. This could be jobs in the field. This could be calls in the call center, financial transactions, you name it. Zoom, you can swap Zoom out for system B, whatever and Dynamics out for system C. It doesn't matter. It's a very typical kind of process that happens in companies and organizations around the world every minute of every day. So our rough times on this, 6 minutes to run the 2 reports, about 4 minutes to save them into Excel, and then the big chunky stuff comes because of all the difficulty of merging and spotting duplicates and combining them. Even though Dynamics has a duplicate detector, it takes about 40 minutes, and for that process, 40 minutes for the following process. By the time you've manipulated them, removed errors, removed where people have changed their name, instead of putting John, they put J. Things like that, so that the system doesn't recognize them as a duplicate. 25 minutes to get them switched over and the right details set up for the survey with the job number, the event results. 15 minutes analysis at least, and then about 5 minutes to write the emails, to draw conclusions and send those out. So what have we got here? We've got human input time of circa 142 minutes and a cost per webinar, €29. Okay, I mean, you'd look at that, you go, it's €29 a week, whatever. But look at that 142 minutes. And what I'm struck here is, I think it's a well-established practice that most businesses would readily espouse, that their most important asset is their people. So if that's the case, and we can liken people to being the world's most powerful supercomputers, capable of making billions of decisions, often hundreds of thousands of momentarily decisions, all simultaneously, we put those supercomputers to use, transferring rows in Excel, deleting column D for 142 minutes. Now, my point is this: it's not necessarily this headline cost, €29. My point is the captured capacity and talent that is being wasted on a non-value added process. Not to mention the lifestyle impact that someone in my operations team has to sit there on a Friday night once 4 o'clock has come, working this through, and this is assuming that nothing fails as they're doing it. So, dissatisfied with the current process, we set about DPA. Now let me show you what it now looks like and talk you through some of the automation tools that we've used. So this is with DPA. Before the webinar, still going to the web page, complete the booking form in Zoom. However, now we've introduced Zapier. So Zapier has a pre-configured interface with Zoom. As soon as you click register on one of those, it triggers off a sequence of events. Automatically, it takes the data that you've entered into Zoom and it looks you up in our Dynamics contact system, creates you if you're new, and apologies, those are duplicated. That should say, if you're not new, add to list. So you then get exported into the automatically through using Zapier into the appropriate registration group. So this week there'll be a group called Daily Process Automation webinar, and you'll be added to that automatically. And then the second tool kicks in, and this is an interesting example because they're two tools working together. Why we've used two tools? Because neither one or the other was capable of doing everything we need it to do. So we now kick in with Microsoft Flow. Microsoft Flow also operates under the title of Power Automate. It was on the list earlier on. And Flow picks that up and automatically sends an email with a link to the live report. So that live list, so as people register right up to 3 o'clock, they're live and they're in the accurate list. And then we go into delivering. Still the same process. So all of that's happened. It takes 1, 2, 3 seconds, 0 human input at that point. So then after the webinar, what happens then? Finish delivering. There is still some human interaction needed here, which is shown. One report needed to be run in Zoom, and then as soon as they take the contents of that report and drop it into Excel, that triggers another Zapier. As it recognizes a new row's been added and immediately adds those attendees to the group. Flow now sends the surveys to you. Flow also sends survey reminders to you 10 days after the event. And then the results are compiled automatically into the data store. We've got some dashboards with Power BI, and again, they're live. So you remember the previous picture that was frozen in time. It was just the snapshot. That's now displayed in Power BI, using Power BI. And then we have a flow process on the end to detect detractors. So we use the Net Promoter Score, which is the standard, very popular global standard of ratings. So score of 1 to 10. The question we ask is how likely, based on your experience in this event, would you be to recommend our company? Scale of 1 to 10. Now in the classification in Net Promoter, as I'm sure many of you know, anything 6 or below is classified as a detractor. So we have abnormality and exception reporting based on that. So when Flow detects that someone's rated as 6 or lower, it automatically triggers an escalation to the person that ran and the account managers, etc. So we can take a look and dive in and see what comments people have added and understand why that's happened. So let's look at this times now. So we've got 3 minutes to run the report, which is human time. So the human time is this bit here. Hopefully that appears. And then 3 minutes for seconds. So the total here, before compared to after, is 142 minutes on the first process before DPA versus 3 minutes. So no more hanging around at the end of the day to move data between cells in Excel. And the cost from €29 per transaction per webinar to €3 per webinar. Now, where have I got the €3 from? It's a useful point to make. Zapier is an on-demand pay-as-you-go tool. The multitude of licensing options, same as Flow, but every single one of those has a very small incremental cost. So you don't pay upfront for the solution. It's an on-demand payment. So Just on that basis, it clearly makes sense, but the cost at this level is almost immaterial at €29 a week. My point is here, I'll reiterate it again, it's about the human input and the talent being wasted on simply mindless activities that we've all built our businesses on and we've all built our operations on, requiring data to be put into Excel, and it never comes out quite in the right form and things need moving around. These new DPA tools are allowing us to be relieved of all of that. And critically, their interoperability, they don't particularly care which system the data is coming from. It uses data as an independent source. And some of the abilities to trigger activities independent of systems. So like this step here that you can see, let me just draw around that. So this step here, trigger on new row, that's just on a new row being put in automatically. No one has to do anything. They don't have to trigger a go button. You just drop the data in and it recognizes a new row has been added to Excel and triggers off a whole load of other activities end to end, which is resulting in this, which by any estimations is pretty impressive. So hopefully that just gives you a very practical example of inadvertent admin that can creep into processes by design in order to make something as simple as, let's just put a webinar on a Friday afternoon for an hour. Now, the more observant of you will have noticed something there. I put this slide up earlier: efficiency, effectiveness, and customer experience. And I made big play over this, the and. So efficiency, effectiveness, and customer experience. Let's just zip back. Well, we've been more efficient. We've cut the time down. We've cut the cost down. We've been more effective. There's less opportunity for error here. It happens faster. But where is the customer experience in this? It's a great example here of focusing on the two and not the customer experience. There's nowhere in here, I don't believe, we have enhanced your experience as our customers. I was really struck by this example because we've done this ourselves and we have this definition and we teach our clients this, and we make great play out of that and. So how have we put that to work? Well, it's made us ask the question. Deploying the method I'm describing today, by being cognizant of those three examples, we have asked the question of this. So what can this do to enhance the customer experience? How can we take this to the next level? So we've approached it in a couple of ways, but what's coming next on the customer experience is we are aware that at this stage, where you complete the Zoom booking form, many of you register for multiple of our webinars. At the moment, you have to enter your details for every single one that you want to do. So we're going to move the Zapier, I'm writing on a non-touch screen, we're going to move the Zapier element this way, in this direction, so that you don't have to complete multiple forms, and we'll make it possible that you can just fill in one and Zapier will pass the details through to every webinar that you want to register on. So that's next on our plan. And that demonstrates my second point here. We've broken this down into pieces. We haven't sought to do this all in one go. So where did we start? We actually started here, over in the flow. So we started with the survey. That was the key point. We needed to get those out faster. It was clearly non-value added, so we started there. We automated that, and then we've worked. We've gone from survey, we've done the analytics, we then did the escalation as 3 separate steps, 3 projects over about a month. And then we moved on to tackling the rest of the admin process within it. So there's probably about 5 projects in here, and then the 6th project will be around enhancing the customer experience at that end. For the booking process. Suze.
So thanks, Rich. So a couple of questions, clarification, and questions on this screen. So Joanne's asking, isn't the customer the person running the process in this context?
That is very generous of you, Joanna. Thank you very much for saying that. Yes, for sure. There is an internal customer in here who's very relieved that she gets to go home at her finish time, which is 4:30 on a Friday. So yes, for sure, that is an absolutely correct assumption. My eye here is also on what this can do for all customers as well. So yeah, great point, and absolutely, you are correct.
And then a question from Dan, who's saying, do any DPA tools have the same level of integration as RPA in terms of being able to interact with whatever is on the screen rather than with a specific set of applications?
Yes, they do. So I can talk from experience. My most experience is in Power Automate and Flow, Microsoft Flow and Power Automate. There is now a full. There's three levels actually. There's a process miner on there. There's a user interface interaction, so exactly how the RPA tools work, of being able to record screen functions, and it'll pick that up and record it and translate it into automated steps. And it also has an AI engine in there as well, so artificial intelligence engine in there. So this is when I mentioned up front that the big vendors, the big RPA vendors, are being threatened. That's precisely why.
Okay, thanks very much, Rich, and thanks to everyone for your questions.
And apologies for my dodgy drawing all over these slides as well. Okay, so super quick look behind the scenes. So this is live behind the scenes of that. So what we've got here from a governance point of view is a list of automated processes, and you actually can see on the left-hand side within Flow the AI builders and the RPA elements of it. I won't go into any detail on this, but this is what one looks like inside. So this is the flow that generates the survey response. Now, I put this in here just to reinforce my point earlier on, that these are not no-code solutions. They are very graphically appealing. They're fairly logical. In fact, they're very logical. However, there is coding within here. So just to get that survey to analyze in the way that it does, there's coding within there. There's no getting away that. However, Google is a very powerful resource. So much of it can be worked out. The critical thing, though, is understanding your underlying data structures. So same again here. Here's behind the scenes in Zapier, that in the Zapier process. There's your webinars. You can see their status of them. You can drill down into one of them, and it shows you the status. So this is next week's, as it happens, standardization, improvement, or restriction, and you configure them. This has got these modules, these pre-configured modules within it for specific software like Zoom and Dynamics. So moving on. I always put this slide in any webinar that I deliver because it is critical to the foundations of success. Particularly with technology solutions, humans anyway want to dive into question 3 here. What changes can we make the result improvement? Roll out changes, get in there, let's get on with the changes. However, ignore the first 2 questions at your peril, particularly with technology, because it's so easy to get led by the technology solutions and the functionalities of the technology, as opposed to this critical question: what are we trying to accomplish by automating this? So you could have said on the previous one, I was trying to accomplish my staff not having to stay behind or work on a Friday evening to do soul-destroying admin. How we know a change is an improvement. We saw those measures that we've got in place there. And then, and only then, go on to question 3. What changes can we make that will result in improvement? And PDSA here is at the heart of it. Plan, do, study, act, experiment, break it down into projects. And that's exactly what we did with that process I showed you earlier on. So let's consider some factors for success. Again, just to reiterate that point I just made, be clear on what is the problem you're trying to solve. Before starting to automate, define the problem first and don't get carried away with the technology. I cannot stress this enough because it's irresistible. You open the box on these things and a world of possibilities opens up where you can say, oh, we can do this, it can do that, it can do that. Okay, but what is the problem you're trying to solve, and how will you know when you've got there? Oversight. Just because it's automated doesn't mean it doesn't require regular process review, which is why this stuff should belong to the business improvement community. And taking care in the design. Sounds obvious, but a badly automated process will efficiently and effectively produce bad results. And worse, it'll do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for no pay. And it'll keep doing it and keep churning out those poor results. That doesn't mean that every process that produces bad results has been badly automated, by the way. It depends on the process very much, but do be mindful of that it is not the be all and end all, and there's lots of diligence needed. in order to make sure that the automation is both effective and efficient. So I've kind of touched on this already about being clear on how you can pilot, not just test before going fully live. Now, I find those two things are often combined and merged together, that piloting becomes part of the testing process. I view them separately. Testing is looking for errors. Piloting is putting into the real world in a safe environment, in a small scale safe environment. They should be distinct and they should be separate in order to deploy PDSA properly and really learn from the results and from what's going on. And yeah, I've been making this point all along. If you can, divide into bite-sized pieces and don't try and automate everything all at once, which is so hard to resist because you'll quickly be able to identify the potential gains. You'll see them all lying before you and you'll want to automate the lot. But think about it from a risk point of view. Every single element that you're automating comes with a degree of risk, a degree of time it's going to take to do. So if you can, back up and just do a piece by piece by piece. Now, this is where I'm afraid to say a lot of the RPA vendors go for big bang solutions. They'll automate from end to end all at once. Sometimes it's appropriate. I'm not suggesting it's not. But if you can find another way to safely experiment, and safe and small does not mean slow, it can produce dramatically better results because you're learning from it as you're going along, and each stage can inform the next and the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally on these points about elimination of non-value add. For me, this is the greatest potential of these daily process automation tools. It is liberating your people from the mundane activities that we have created in the past 20, 30 years in order to run our operations. The endless meddling with Excel, the shifting data from one place to another, the dreaded preparation of reports that nobody reads. Find another way, in-process measures, post measures, live dashboards where possible, so that people's time isn't spent putting these things together. It's spent on the truly valuable thing, which is the interpretation of those results, not the preparation of them. That probably is my most significant point in here. Okay, so another quick example. Now, Barry, in the last couple of webinars, talked a lot about process confirmation. How do we know? How did the famous Dave know? And that's around an effective process confirmation methodology. So where does that fit with daily process automation? Monitoring process performance, this confirmation is based on carrying out confirmation of that performance. And confirmation is a check to distinguish the normal from the abnormal. I mentioned some process confirmation in our survey situation, spotting abnormalities. Focusing on key aspects of the process operation and performance, and it involves structured, regular, and it should involve every level of the organization. And you'll be familiar with these things like visual management, control charts, standard operating procedures, 5S, leader standard work, etc. are all part of that. Now, these images on the right, that's kind of, number one is a go, look, see exercise as process confirmation. But all too often we have the piece of paper, the checklist, whether it's a digital piece of paper or whether it's a physical piece of paper. Many of our organizations are still, even now, full of checklists of different kinds that rely on structured, regular completion of them. Now, why are we paying people to perform the task of actually checking and running the system that requires checking rather than trying to automate that? So this is a challenge that we face in many of our clients. So we developed a solution, again, using some of the tools, which is our Performance Genius solution, which is aimed at taking all the work out and the non-value added activity that's around daily process confirmation. So in this world, we're using three friends here, Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, and Power BI. So what we're doing is collecting the Power Apps automatically schedules things like shift handovers, and provides the structure for them to make sure they're done. It provides process confirmation checklists in whatever structure they need to be, in the time structure that they need to be, so that that piece of the work that just needs doing is not a task that we're requiring our people to do. And then the power in the flow in the middle of using Microsoft Flow in the middle enables the escalations. So things here, standards out of 5S standards out of compliance, equipment breakdown reported. Based on the data that's collected up front, those alerts can be automated. And that's just, again, about focusing on the resolution of those issues, not on the administration of it. And finally, with the reports, being able to review the data over time because it's automatically collated. Nowhere in here are we requiring those magnificent supercomputers, our people, to do any of the admin around this. The data is all in one system already. It's all generated together, so it's in the dashboard automatically, and no one needs to sit there performing the soul-destroying compilation of the Excel reports within here, and then copying and pasting them into PowerPoint and whatever else we do, in theory, adding value. It just isn't, and that's where we've manifested this, and it comes about behavior. So if you can get the technology to support the behaviors that you want in your organizations, that's one of the real strengths of this DPA pocket of tools. So very mindful of the time, moving into my summary. I can see we've got a few minutes left. So one of my key points here: continuous improvement teams need to be at the center of DPA. The governance is so important here, and the natural ability and the natural inclination of people to jump to question 3 in the 3-question model requires method. You already have the method. You've already got the methods and the methodologies and the tools you need in order to make this a success. That's why I'm so confident that the time is now for continuous improvement teams to take the lead in DPA. Don't be led by the technology. I think I've made myself clear on that one. It's a world of possibilities. Research them, but understand what you're trying to accomplish. Again, around experimenting safely, it is always worth the time to do it, and being clear on the customer impact. Governance is crucial, and managing the process of automation. We're equipped, folks. The continuous improvement teams are already equipped with what you need. You know how to manage a portfolio of processes. This is no different. They're just automatic ones. So it shouldn't fall into the IT space just because they're technical. And then finally, don't confuse change with improvement. I put that in every presentation I ever deliver because it's so easy to do, and it's often too late, particularly with technology solutions, to backtrack once you've implemented. Okay.
Thanks, Rich. We have had a few questions which I've been trying to answer through the Q&A, but just so in case anyone, hopefully I've answered them correctly. So there were a couple of, there was a point around the what work should be done up front, really, in order to improve. And one of the points that I made is that actually Rich referred at the beginning today to the digital process transformation webinar that he delivered last year. We're absolutely covering, that sort of topic. It is in the recordings if anyone wants it. Didn't know if there's anything you wanted to add there, Rich.
Yeah, very quick. So it's the standard tools: flowchart, the as is; value stream map, the as is; understand the current performance; use a SIPOC. It's no different. Just because this is an automated process, it's a process at the end of the day. Understand its current performance and its current shape, and identify the opportunities for automation once you've done that.
And there was a question around, did the tools take over, so that sort of the user sits back and just watches, or are they running in the background? And I said, they are running in the background, so you can get on with other more useful work. You made the point, Rich, earlier, Ron, just towards the end of your slides around the the need to continuously review. One of the questions we were asked was, how do you ensure it's sustainable? What happens if the data or the inputs change and so on? And I think that's really your point around, you've got to keep ensuring it's fit for purpose.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So it's the same as any other process, except because of the automated nature, if it goes out of control and the inputs change, the impact can potentially be more severe and happen faster. That's a very generalized statement, by the way, but yeah, absolutely. Process diligence and process governance are no different to any other setting. It is needed, but often ignored. Automate it, chuck it in the back. That's the typical scenario we see.
Sorry, just the idea of our IT team daring to chuck it in the back and ignore it. So I think that covers everything. So thank you very much, Rich, and thank you everybody for your questions. It's really been great to also hear your observations and share with you. Just before we close, just a reminder that we're excited that we've now launched our new version of our certified Lean Six Sigma online Yellow Belt. Anybody who has previously either taken our Yellow Belt or joined us for Green Belt training will be familiar with our Yellow Belt. It's a fantastic introduction to improvement, and so it's a great place to start. So if you've got any team members who you think would really benefit from it, do get in touch.
And the registration process uses Zapier.
Even better. At least you'll know what you're doing. We're also offering our complimentary Apple iPad. So anyone who enrolls on one of our public Lean Six Sigma Green Belts, Black Belts, or Master Black Belts, we will provide you with an iPad that will allow you to join in with the collaboration tools that we're using, Infinity boards and so on, and really enhances the experience for you. So please, do take advantage of that. We've got a number of customer videos on social media talking about our virtual classroom training. Please do keep your eye out for any of those to hear about their experiences. And finally, thank you for joining us today. Please do look out for our Voice of the Customer survey. You're going to receive that shortly. Now you know what's operating that. We're really looking forward to hearing all of your feedback on today's session. And as I said before, we're also really keen to hear your suggestions for topics about future webinars. So please keep those coming. And that's it. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. So on behalf of PMI, on behalf of Rich, and myself, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. It's been really great to be with you this afternoon. And I hope you have a very safe and relaxing weekend. Thank you.